Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about parabolas. Now, we've already spoken about parabolas if you were in one of my classes back in section 8.5. And the form, the standard form for a parabola looked like this one, where it was y equals. Are you with me? Okay, so since it says y equals, y goes in which direction? Correct, y's go up and y's go down, which means this is a parabola that either will go up or go down. And if this number in front of the parentheses is positive, it goes up, which means we can identify a minimum value, and that would be y equals k. And if that number in front is less than 0 or negative, that means it opens down, which we have a maximum value of y equals k. Our vertex will be h, which is with the x, k, and the axis of symmetry is x equals h. Remember, the axis of symmetry is a line cutting the parabola in half. So that's a refresher back from section 8.5 if you were actually in one of my classes. So in this particular section, not only are we talking about these types of parabolas again, but now we're talking about a parabola that looks like this. Notice in this case it says x equals, doesn't it? Since it says x equals, that means I'm talking about parabolas that either open to the left or to the right. Are you with me? They open either left or right. Now here's the deal. My vertex is still going to be identified as h, comma, k. K is still a positive number because I'm going to take the y minus k, set it equal to 0, and when I solve for y, I end up with a positive k, just like we did over here for the h, okay? If this number in front happens to be a positive number, then that means it opens to the right, because the right is where all the positive numbers are. Agreed? And if it opens to the right, then I'm going to identify a minimum value, and the minimum value in this case will be an x equals. So x equals h. Because the y's are not minimum anymore. It's the x's that are minimum because it's either going left or it's going right. Are you with me? Just like this one. This one went up or this one went down. Okay? Now, if a is less than 0 or a negative number, that means this opens to the left because going to the left is where all the negative numbers are for your x's. And that means I have a maximum value I can identify, and that would still be x equals h. Cool? Okay, last thing is that axis of symmetry, that line that cuts it right through the middle. And in this case, since it cuts it through the middle, if I have a parabola opening left or one opening right, cutting through the middle is horizontal, isn't it? Which means that's a y equals line, and in that case, y equals k. So in this particular section, we are also dealing with parabolas that are opening left and right. And the information is basically the same, but now I have to think left or right when it starts with x. This information over here is what we have already looked at back in section 8.5. So hang in there, I've got some examples for you. Okay, so let's look at these two examples over here. They're going opens, and you're like, what do you mean opens? They want to know which direction these parabolas open. So let's look at the first one. First thing I'd like you to notice is this. It says y equals, doesn't it? Since it says y equals, y's go which direction? Good, up or down. So this parabola either goes up or down, and we have to figure out which one it is. So now, how do I identify which way it opens? Up or down? Good. Some of you are like, hey, that number in front of x squared. That's right. This number in front of x squared is what? Is negative. Since this is negative, that means that a, that was in the generic form, the a being less than 0, means this opens, that's right, this opens down. Okay? Opens down. And they didn't ask for this, but let's figure this out. If it opens down, is there a min or a max value? Good. That means I can identify a maximum value also. So this is a parabola opening down. Cool? Okay, let's look at the second one. The second one starts with x. X's go which direction? Yeah, they either go left or right. So this parabola is either a left opening or a right opening, and we got to figure out which one it is. So how do we figure it out? Good. Some of you are like, hey, the number in front. Yeah, the lead coefficient, the number in front of y squared. What is that? Yeah, that's a positive. Even though I don't see the sign, that's a positive. So since it's a positive, that means A, right? The A is greater than 0, which means this opens, correct, it opens to the right, because to the right is where the positive x's are. And since it opens to the right, do I have a min or a max? Good. I have a minimum value. Cool? Okay. Now, let's take a look at this particular equation. Is this an equation of a parabola? Yes, it is, because I see that square, which automatically tells me parabola. Now, is it in standard form? Yes, it is. Good. Another point in our favor. And I'm noticing it says x here, which means this parabola either goes, good, this is either a left or a right parabola. Now, I know they didn't ask for this, but it's not a bad idea to identify any of this information for our own sakes to make sure we understand it. So, I notice in front is a positive sign, correct? In front of the parentheses is a positive sign. Since it's positive, does it go left or does it go right? Excellent. It goes to the right because the right is where the positive x's are. Awesome. Okay, now let's look at the vertex. So the vertex is supposed to be HK, right? All right. So in this particular case, sometimes it's easier to identify the K value first. And you're like, why? Well, because in this parenthesis, I have y plus 3. This parenthesis is going to give me my y value first. So remember how we get it? Yeah, you take the y plus 3, you set it equal to 0, and when you solve, you get y equals negative 3, don't you? Well, that is the K. So you know your K is negative 3. Now follow along. If you plug negative 3 in here, what's negative 3 plus 3? Good, 0. What's 0 squared? Good, 0. 0 times is positive? Yeah, still 0. Plus 1? 1. So 1 equals x. So my vertex is 1, negative 3. Cool? Okay. Now again, I know it did not ask for this, but let's figure this out. Since it opens to the right, min or max? Good, a minimum value. And your minimum value, is it going to be an x or a y? Still an x, because we're talking about left and right, so still an x. And in this case, x doesn't have a choice. X has to be equal to, good, 1. How about that axis of symmetry, that runs right through the middle of it? So, let me get a little bit of board space here so you can see what I'm talking about. All right? So, axis of symmetry goes left and right, doesn't it? That's what kind of line? Yes, that's a horizontal line. So, notice, if I have my grid system, and if my vertex is at 1, negative 3, here's 1, negative 3, and it's opening to the right. And now, mind you, I just sketched that, so don't get too, like, how'd she get that? I just sketched it. Does it make sense that x equaling 1 is the smallest x value? Yeah, because all the other x's are to the right of it. All the other x's are going to be larger than it, correct? Yeah, so the minimum x makes sense. Now that axis of symmetry, remember, that's a line cutting right through the middle of this parabola. It cuts right through the middle of it. And it crosses which axis? Yeah, it's crossing the y-axis. Through what number? Good, -3. So you just found your axis of symmetry was y equals -3. Does that make sense? Okay. I know all they asked us for was the vertex, which we found right here. But you know, we were able to find some other information and we were able to graph it at the same time. Good? Okay, hang in there. Got a couple more problems for us. Okay, so let's look at number 2. On number 2, same directions, find the vertex. Now, number 2 almost doesn't look like a standard form parabola, does it? Because I don't have any parentheses in it. As a matter of fact, this is all they gave me. Now, here's the deal. Believe it or not, this is in standard form. I know I'm missing a number in parentheses with the y, and I know I'm missing a number at the end. So just let me do a little bit of a rewrite here, if you allow me to. Technically, that y is supposed to be in parentheses with a square outside, right? And plus a number at the end, yes? But I don't see any numbers there, do I? Okay, well that must mean that there's a 0 in here, because y plus 0 would just give me a y, which is how I would just get y squared, right? And there must have been a plus 0 at the end, which would have been the only way that I would have had nothing at the end, because nothing in math is represented by, you got it, 0. So this looks like a standard form, or the standard form for this particular parabola. Now, some of you may benefit from writing it with those zeros, and others of you are like, nah, I'm good, I don't need them. Good, you know who you are. So just make sure that you write it whichever way you need to. Now, here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing it says x equals, which means this is a parabola going, good, either left or right. And again, I know all they wanted was the vertex, but it's not a bad idea to be able to identify this stuff. And since this 8 happens to be positive, which direction is it going? That's right, it is heading to the right, isn't it? Good. So, what's my vertex? Good, your vertex would be 0, 0. And goes to the right, so min or max. Good, you can identify a minimum value. And in this case, the minimum value is, yes, x is, because I'm talking about left and right, x equaling 0, because x does equal 0. And your axis of symmetry. Remember, that's that horizontal line. It has to cut through the middle of a parabola going to the right. So that's the y equals line, and again, in this case, y has no choice, it has to equal 0. Cool? Okay, let's look at number 3. I forgot to write something, so I'm going to change it up just a little bit, but gratefully you can handle it. All right, now, is this a parabola? Yes, it is. How do you know? I see a square there, so it's a parabola. And which direction? Up, down, left, right? Which way? Good. It either goes up or down because I see this x equals. Oh, excuse me, I said it incorrectly. I see this x equals, which means it's either going to go left or right, isn't it? Yeah, it's either going to go left or right, and we're going to have to figure out which way it goes. Do you know already? I think some of you've got it. Because of this negative sign in front, it is going to go to the left. Awesome. Now, they still want me to find the vertex. Is this in standard form? No, it's not, which means what do we have to do to put it in standard form? Some of you said it, some of you moaned and groaned, but yes, complete the square. Woohoo! Ready? Okay, so let's remember. To complete the square, I can't have this third number, so it's got to go. So that means we're going to minus the 19 on both sides. And besides not having that third number, we're not allowed to have this negative in the front. So how do I get rid of that negative? Good. And by the way, that is a -1, isn't it? So I'm going to divide everything by a -1. Which leaves me a -x plus 19 equaling y minus 8y. Pardon me, y squared minus 8y. Yes? Okay, So no third number here next to the y squared, no number in front of the y squared. The right side is now in the correct format. Now I can complete the square on the right side. So remember to complete the square. Complete the square says that we are going to take the number, in this case in front of y, which was a -8. You're going to take half of it and then you're going to square it, which gives you a -4 squared, which gives you a positive 16. And what are you going to do with that positive 16? Good. You're going to add it to both sides, aren't you? So let me get myself a little bit of space here. So I am going to add that 16 to both sides. And the left side, all I have to do is combine like terms, right? Now remember, the whole point of completing the square on the right is so that this side's easy to factor. What will it factor to? Good. Y minus 4 in parentheses squared, or quantity squared. That's another way you can say it. Standard form yet? Almost. You got to move that 35 over, don't you? And yes, you're going to minus 35 from both sides. Standard form yet? Almost. That negative has got to go. So, to get rid of the negative, I multiply both sides by that negative, don't I? Okay. So, this is what it looks like in standard form. We had to complete the square to get it there. Okay, so again, if you're like, how do I complete the square again? Well, we talked about that before, back in all those quadratics. So please make certain you go take a look at solving the quadratics by completing the square. Okay, now, is that in the right format? Yes, it is. We already know it opens to the left. So remember, they did ask us to find the vertex, didn't they? So for this particular problem, your vertex, remember that's HK, isn't it? Which one's easier to find first? Yeah, the K, because the y minus 4 is in parentheses. So I have to take y minus 4 equal to 0, which means y equals 4, which means for my vertex, I know the y value is 4. Now look, what's 4 minus 4? Good, 0. What's 0 squared? 0. 0 times that negative? 0. Plus the 35. 35. So I have 35 equaling x. So my vertex is 35, comma 4. And I know it opens to the left. With me? Okay, so I know all it wanted was the vertex and we found it. But let's find the other information to help us out. Since it opens left, do I have a min or a max? Yep, we can identify a maximum value. And in this case, the maximum value is still an x because it's going left. And now I'm talking about x's because x's go left. And in this case, the maximum x is, good, 35. But I also have the axis of symmetry, which is a horizontal line. That's right, that's a y equals line. And in this case, y equals 4. So just like in that previous section, which was 8.5, all this information is exactly the same. If it's not in standard form, I'm going to have to complete the square to get it that way. Opening left or right in this case versus up and down, but still finding the vertex, minimum value, maximum values, axis of symmetry, all that stuff remain the same. It's just now I'm talking about lefts and right versus ups and downs. Cool? Good. Okay, you have fun with this section and I'll catch you on the flip side.